Tonight, when the lights go out, something will happen inside you. Maybe it's just a flicker, a half-second of unease before your eyes adjust. Or maybe it's something stronger, a sudden urge to check the corners of the room, to pull the blanket a little higher, to listen harder than you normally would. You've done it 1,000 times. You've told yourself it's irrational. You know there's nothing there. But what if the feeling isn't irrational at all? What if it's one of the most sophisticated survival tools your body has ever built? The dark has terrified humans for as long as humans have existed. Not because of ghosts, not because of monsters, but because the dark, for almost all of human history, was genuinely, lethally dangerous. And your brain hasn't forgotten that, even if you have. Go back 200,000 years. You are a human living on the East African savanna. You have no fire, no shelter with walls, no light switch. When the sun sets, the world doesn't just get darker, it transforms. Every shadow becomes a potential predator. Every sound becomes a potential threat. And unlike the lions and leopards who own the night, who evolved with superior night vision and can move silently through the dark, you are essentially blind. This is the world your nervous system was built inside. And the nervous system that survived that world was not the one that stayed calm. It was the one that got scared. Neuroscientist David Eagleman, who studies how the brain processes fear and threat, has described fear responses as the product of millions of years of ruthless selection pressure. The organisms that felt nothing in the dark were eaten. The organisms that felt something, that tensed up, that listened harder, that moved less and breathed more carefully, those were the ones who lived, who reproduced, who became you. This is what evolutionary biologists call a survival bias. The fear didn't have to be accurate. It didn't have to mean something was actually there. It just had to keep you alive long enough to find out. 100 false alarms were worth one real one, because a single real one, missed, meant death. So your brain built a system, a deeply ancient, deeply automatic system that activates the moment visual information drops below a certain threshold. It's not a thought, it's not a decision. It's a reflex, older than language, older than culture, older almost certainly than anything you would recognize as a modern human mind. Psychologist Glenn Bonu at the University of Michigan has documented what happens in the human body during darkness-induced anxiety. Heart rate increases, peripheral vision sharpens. The amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, lights up in a way that has nothing to do with what you know intellectually, and everything to do with what your body believes instinctively. Your palms sweat slightly. Your muscles prime themselves for movement. You become, in a very real physiological sense, a different version of yourself, a more ancient one. And here is the part that almost nobody talks about. This system is not a malfunction. This system saved your ancestors every single night for 200,000 years. It is the reason you are here. Every generation between you and the first humans who watched the African savanna go dark, every single one of them survived the night. Not by being fearless, by being exactly the right kind of afraid. Think about what that means across the scale of deep time. 200,000 years of nights, roughly 73 million sunsets. And on every one of them, the humans who carried a version of the fear response you carry now were slightly more likely to survive than the ones who didn't. That fear wasn't a bug in the system. It was the system. Now consider what happened very recently in the long story of human evolution.
About 150,000 years ago, evidence suggests, humans began consistently using fire. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham at Harvard has argued that controlled fire changed nearly everything about how humans lived. including how they related to the night. Fire pushed the darkness back. It made the hours after sunset survivable in a completely new way. It allowed for social bonding after dark, for storytelling, for the kind of extended waking hours that may have accelerated cognitive development. But fire didn't eliminate the dark. It just created islands of light inside it. Beyond the firelight's edge, the same darkness waited, the same predators, the same silence. And the same ancient reflex remained active, just slightly quieter than before. Now consider that electric light, the light that allows you to banish darkness entirely, to make a room at midnight as bright as a room at noon, has existed for less than 150 years. In the timeline of human evolution, 150 years is nothing. It is a rounding error. It is so recent that evolution has had essentially no time to respond to it whatsoever. Which means that tonight, when you flip the switch and plunge yourself into darkness, the brain doing the plunging is still. Structurally, neurologically, at every level that matters, the brain of a creature who has every reason to be afraid of what lives in the dark. Researcher and clinical psychologist Lars-Goran Ost, who has spent decades studying fear responses and phobias, has made an important distinction that helps explain why some people feel mild unease in the dark, while others experience something closer to terror. He identifies a spectrum between adaptive fear, the low-level alertness that kept your ancestors alive, and maladaptive fear, which has been amplified by experience, trauma, or anxiety into something that interferes with daily life. Both sit on the same original spectrum.
Both are running the same ancient software. The difference is in how loudly that software is running. This means your fear of the dark, wherever it falls on that spectrum, is not a sign of weakness. It is not a sign that something went wrong in your development. It is a sign that your threat detection system is operational, that it received its ancient inheritance intact, that somewhere deep in the wiring of your nervous system, your ancestors are still doing their job. And this reframe matters more than it might seem at first, because modern culture has taught you to be embarrassed by the fear of the dark. It's something children have, not adults. It's irrational. It's primitive. You should know better by now. But primitive and irrational are not the same thing. The fear of the dark is primitive in the truest sense. It comes from a time before civilization, before language, before everything you think of as you. But it is not irrational. It is, in fact, one of the most rational responses a biological creature could have developed to its actual environment. The irrationality is not in the feeling. The irrationality is in the gap between the world the feeling was built for and the world you actually live in. Those are two different things. And noticing the difference is not a reason to dismiss the feeling. It is a reason to understand it. So, what do you do with this? Not much, perhaps. You don't need to act differently. You don't need to be afraid of the dark any more or less than you already are. But the next time you feel that flicker, that quiet tightening in the chest when the room goes black, you might try to hear it for what it is. Not a flaw, not a leftover from childhood, not something to push down or explain away. A message from every ancestor who made it through the night, delivered, as it always was, in the dark. Tonight, when the lights go out, something will happen inside you. And now you know why it was always supposed to.